Live TV gives stars one chance and no mercy. No edits, no rewinds, just raw moments broadcast to the world. A single mistake can flip fame into ridicule and success into a cautionary tale. These are the moments when everything went wrong on camera. From split-second mistakes to moments that changed everything. So grab your popcorn, get comfortable on the couch, and let's dive into the stars who destroyed their careers on live television. Iggy Azalea. In 2014, Iggy Azalea was unstoppable. Every radio station played Fancy, every playlist featured her name, and pop culture could not escape her accent or her hooks. When Dancing with the Stars invited her to perform live during the season finale, it was supposed to be a celebration of a massive breakout year and a reminder that she was at the very top of the game. Then the music started, the cameras rolled, and her earpiece quietly betrayed her. No clear cue, no reliable playback, just that brief frozen moment where every performer realizes something has gone terribly wrong and there is no escape. She missed the opening beat, stumbled into the performance, and suddenly the victory lap turned into a survival exercise broadcast to millions. Afterward, Iggy explained that there was a technical issue with the sound in her ear. That explanation made sense. Unfortunately, live television does not run on logic, and the internet does not offer refunds. What viewers remembered was not the explanation, but the clip replayed endlessly dissected frame by frame and turned into instant commentary. To be clear, this moment alone did not destroy her career. Industry conflicts, label issues, and the pressure of overnight superstardom all played their part. But this performance became the moment where the narrative shifted. She went from flawless hitmaker to artist under scrutiny, all because of a few silent seconds on live TV. The lesson is simple and brutal. You can dominate the charts, own the moment, and control the conversation. But on live television, everything depends on a tiny piece of plastic in your ear. When that fails, the silence is filled immediately, and it is filled by the internet. Thicke. In 2013, Thicke finally crossed the line from industry veteran to full-blown pop star. Blurred Lines was everywhere. Radio loved it. Charts crowned it. The song turned Thicke into a household name almost overnight. The MTV Video Music Awards performance should have been the ultimate victory lap. Instead, it became the moment everything started to unravel. Sharing the stage with Miley Cyrus, Thicke performed Blurred Lines in a routine that instantly overshadowed the music itself. The performance leaned hard into shock value, pushing boundaries in a way many viewers found awkward, excessive, and uncomfortable. What was meant to look edgy and playful landed more like a public miscalculation broadcast to millions. The reaction was immediate. Critics pounced, social media erupted. The conversation shifted away from the song and straight toward Thicke himself. Suddenly, Blurred Lines was no longer just a hit. It was controversial. The performance became a cultural punchline and a lightning rod for criticism that refused to die down. For Thicke, the fallout was severe. Follow-up music failed to connect. Public perception cooled rapidly. The same song that launched him into superstardom now felt like an anchor dragging him under. One live performance had permanently changed how audiences viewed him. Years later, Thicke found a way back into the spotlight as a television personality, reminding audiences of his talent in a safer, more controlled setting. But the damage from that night lingered. Live television did not expose a lack of talent. It exposed a lack of restraint. And if you ever wondered how fast a hit song can turn into a warning label, just remember that sometimes the most dangerous line is not in the lyrics, it is the one you cross on live TV. Jaime Kennedy. By 2013, Jaime Kennedy was no longer at the peak of his fame, but he was still recognizable enough to be trusted with a live New Year's Eve broadcast. The idea sounded simple. A comedian to count down some jokes and a cheerful send-off into the new year. Live television, however, had other plans. Almost immediately, the show began to unravel. Technical problems, stacked up cues were missed, and the atmosphere grew tense instead of festive. Rather than smoothing things over like an experienced host, Kennedy appeared visibly frustrated on air. He snapped at the production team, argued into a hot mic, and let the chaos control him instead of the other way around. As the night went on, the broadcast felt less like a celebration and more like an awkward rehearsal that accidentally went live. The moment that sealed its fate came at midnight when the countdown itself was mistimed. A New Year's Eve show that cannot even welcome the new year on time is essentially admitting defeat in real time. Viewers were stunned then entertained for all the wrong reasons. Social media erupted instantly, branding the special as one of the worst New Year's broadcasts ever aired. What was meant to be edgy and spontaneous came across as uncomfortable and unprofessional. Kennedy's career had already slowed, but this broadcast became the moment many people point to as the final confirmation that his time as a mainstream TV host was over. Live television does not reward panic. It exposes it. And on that night, it exposed everything. Fergie. By 2018, Fergie was no longer dominating the charts the way she once did, but her name still carried weight. Former Black Eyed Peas frontwoman hitmaker pop culture fixture, so when she was chosen to sing the national anthem at the NBA All-Star Game, it felt like a respectable, dignified moment to remind everyone she still had it. Then she started singing. Instead of the traditional steady delivery audiences expect, Fergie went for something bold, slow-breathy, and unmistakably sensual. The anthem was stretched, stylized, and performed as if it were a late-night jazz lounge remix rather than a pre-game ceremony. Within seconds, cameras caught players exchanging looks, biting lips, and struggling not to laugh. The reaction was instant and merciless. Social media exploded. The performance was replayed endlessly, often paired with reaction shots of confused athletes and stunned spectators. What was meant to be artistic interpretation became a viral punchline by halftime. To be fair, Fergie did not forget the lyrics, miss a cue, or suffer a technical failure. She sang exactly what she intended to sing. That may have been the problem. Live television made it clear that some moments are not begging for reinvention, especially when millions of viewers expect tradition. Afterward, Fergie issued a polite statement explaining her creative choice, but the internet had already made its decision. The anthem performance quickly became the defining pop culture reference point of her later career, overshadowing years of successful music. Live television did not question her talent, it questioned her judgment. And if there is one thing the internet loves more than a bold choice, it is watching that bold choice age badly in real time. So what do you think? Was this a bold artistic choice that people just did not get, or a reminder that some songs really do not need a remix? Let us know in the comments and be honest. Did you laugh, or did you try very hard not to? Steven Seagal. In the early 1990s, Steven Seagal was riding high as an action hero. He was serious, intense, and built an entire persona around being untouchable. So when he was invited to host Saturday Night Live in 1991, it should have been a chance to show range and prove he could laugh at himself. That was the problem. He did not want to laugh at himself. Behind-the-scenes reports from cast and writers later painted a brutal picture. Seagal reportedly refused to play along rejected jokes and treated comedy sketches like real fight scenes. Instead of embracing satire, he pushed to look dominant and cool, missing the entire point of the show. SNL thrives on self-mockery. Seagal wanted control. What aired was painfully stiff. Sketches fell flat, the energy felt hostile, and the audience could sense something was off. Rather than a fun detour from action films, the episode became uncomfortable to watch. Even years later, multiple SNL alumni have openly referred to Seagal as one of the worst hosts in the show's history. The damage was not immediate, but it was lasting. After his SNL appearance, Seagal's career slowly drifted downward. Big studio roles dried up, and he was increasingly relegated to low-budget direct-to-video films that barely registered with audiences. This was not a scandal or a meltdown. It was something worse. A live television moment that revealed a truth Hollywood did not like. Steven Seagal could throw punches, but when it came to playing along, he simply would not. And live TV made sure everyone noticed. Mariah Carey. By 2016, Mariah Carey was already untouchable in terms of legacy. Decades of hits, record-breaking vocals, and an annual holiday takeover had cemented her status as a music icon. Performing on Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve should have been routine. Big stage, global audience, familiar songs, and a countdown to midnight. Then the audio collapsed. As the performance began, Mariah's earpiece malfunctioned, leaving her out of sync with the backing track. She could not hear the music properly and quickly realized the show was slipping out of her control. With no chance to reset, she stopped singing. Portions of the song paced the stage and openly referenced the technical issues while the dancers continued as if everything were normal. The contrast was impossible to ignore. A polished stage, a confused performance, and millions of viewers watching it unfold in real time. Within minutes, clips flooded social media. Some called it a disaster. Others blamed the production. Everyone had an opinion before the new year even officially began. The technical problems were real, but live television rarely rewards explanations. It judges reactions. The moment did not end Mariah Carey's career, but it cracked the image of flawless control she had carried for years. Even legends are vulnerable when live TV decides not to cooperate. If you enjoy breaking down iconic live TV moments like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the next countdown might come with another moment no one saw coming. Clemente. Clemente was not famous, controversial, or even established. He was a young journalist on his very first day as a co-anchor at a small North Dakota news station. Years of school and preparation had led to one simple moment. Sit at the desk, read the teleprompter, and begin a career. Then live television reminded him how unforgiving it can be. As the opening graphics rolled, Clemente believed he was not yet on air. The microphones, however, strongly disagreed. In what he thought was a private moment, he muttered several profanities that went straight into homes across the region. By the time the broadcast officially began, it was already over. The clip spread instantly. Within 24 hours, Clemente was suspended and then fired. His career as a news anchor ended before viewers even learned his name. One mistake, no warning, no second chance. Ironically, the incident made him nationally famous. He appeared on late-night television and became a viral punchline, but viral fame does not translate into newsroom trust. In journalism, credibility is everything, and once it is gone, it rarely returns. There was no scandal, no bad intention, just one open microphone. And in broadcasting, that is all it takes to turn a first day into a last day. Janet Jackson. In 2004, Janet Jackson was already a certified legend. Decades of hits, cultural impact, and industry respect had secured her place in music history. Performing at the Super Bowl halftime show should have been nothing more than a victory parade on the biggest live television stage in America. Instead, it became the most infamous second of her career. During the performance, a brief wardrobe malfunction occurred in the final moments of the show. It lasted barely a heartbeat, but live television does not measure time the way real life does. That single moment was replayed, endlessly frozen, zoomed, debated, and weaponized across every media outlet imaginable. What followed was brutal and wildly uneven. Despite not being solely responsible for the incident, Janet took the overwhelming share of the backlash. Radio stations quietly stopped playing her music. Television appearances dried up. Industry executives distanced themselves as if she had committed an unforgivable crime rather than suffered a live broadcast mishap. The reaction said more about the culture than the incident itself. Careers were not just paused, they were punished. Meanwhile, others involved moved on with far less damage. Janet, however, was effectively erased from the mainstream conversation for years. Time eventually corrected the record. Public opinion softened history, reevaluated the outrage, and Janet Jackson reclaimed her legacy with long overdue recognition and honors. But the damage was done. This was not a meltdown, a bad decision, or a lack of talent. It was proof that on live television, a single second can outweigh a lifetime of achievement. Charles Rocket. In the early 1980s, Charles Rocket was positioned as one of Saturday Night Live's rising stars. He was a regular on Weekend Update, a visible face in a new cast and part of NBC's plan to push the show into its next era. Expectations were high and the pressure was even higher. Then live television struck. During a 1981 broadcast, Rocket accidentally dropped a profanity on air. Today, it would barely cause a ripple. At the time, it was considered a serious violation of broadcast standards. Network television treated that word as completely unacceptable, and there was no room for context, intent, or forgiveness. The fallout was immediate. Combined with poor critical reception for the season, Rocket's slip became the final excuse NBC needed to clean house. He was fired along with several other cast members, and his run on SNL ended almost overnight. One word outweighed months of work and years of ambition. Rocket continued acting afterward, landing roles in films and television throughout the 1980s and 1990s. He worked steadily, but his career never fully recovered its early momentum. In pop culture memory, he became less known for his performances and more remembered as the guy who crossed the one line you never crossed on live TV. This was not a scandal or a meltdown. It was a reminder of how unforgiving broadcast television once was. Live TV did not allow mistakes back then, it turned them into cautionary tales. Paula Deen. By 2013, Paula Deen was television comfort food. Southern charm butter-heavy recipes and a brand built on warmth and familiarity. Then a lawsuit from a former employee pulled her off the kitchen set and into a legal deposition that would change everything. Under oath, Deen acknowledged having used a racial slur in the past. The admission spread instantly, and the image she had spent years cultivating cracked wide open. Sponsors panicked, networks paused, and the internet did what it always does when a wholesome brand collides with ugly context. Trying to regain control of the narrative, Deen went on live television to explain herself. Instead of easing concerns, the appearance only made things worse. Her tone came across as defensive and self-focused, and viewers felt she was centering her own pain rather than addressing why people were upset in the first place. The gap between intention and perception grew wider by the minute. The fallout was swift and expensive. Shows were canceled. Partnerships evaporated. Corporate ties were cut almost overnight. What had once been a carefully curated empire unraveled faster than a failed soufflé on live TV. Deen would later attempt a comeback, but the damage to her mainstream reputation was permanent. This was not a technical glitch or a slip of the tongue. It was a reminder that live television cannot soften a hard truth, and sometimes the camera simply reflects what people were already afraid to see. So what do you think? Was this a failed attempt at damage control or proof that some mistakes only get louder once the camera is on? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Jenny Slate. In 2009, Jenny Slate achieved what countless comedians never do. She earned a spot on Saturday Night Live. For a young comic, SNL is not just a show, it is validation, a launchpad, and a promise of a future in mainstream comedy. Slate had worked years for that seat at the table, and now she was finally live on air. Then live television reminded her how thin the margin for error really is. During her very first episode, while performing a sketch, Slate accidentally let a profanity slip out. It was not planned, not emphasized, and not repeated. It was a split-second mistake. Unfortunately, SNL is built on one unforgiving rule. You do not do that on live network television. The reaction was swift and quiet. There was no dramatic firing, no public announcement, and no on-air apology tour. Slate simply did not return the following season. Official explanations were vague, but the message was clear. One word had erased a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. At the time, it felt like a career-ending moment. One bad beat, one nervous slip, and the biggest stage in comedy was gone. Many performers never recover from that kind of setback. But this is where the story turns. Instead of disappearing, Slate slowly rebuilt. She found success in voice acting, indie comedy, and television roles that allowed her personality to shine without the pressure of live broadcast rules. Over time, she became a recognizable and respected presence in shows and animated series that reached millions. In the end, SNL did not define Jenny Slate, it redirected her. Live television shut the door instantly, but persistence opened several others. Sometimes one mistake does not end the story, it just changes the genre. Brian Williams. For years, Brian Williams was the face of credibility in American television news. Calm voice, steady delivery, trusted presence. As anchor of NBC Nightly News, he was not just reporting the story. For many viewers, he was the story. Then one story came back to haunt him. Williams had repeatedly told an anecdote about covering the Iraq War, claiming that the helicopter he was traveling in was forced down after being hit by enemy fire. It was a dramatic, harrowing tale that reinforced his image as a journalist who had been in the thick of history. There was only one problem. It was not true. Other journalists and military personnel who were actually present came forward and clarified that Williams was not in the helicopter that took fire. He was in a different aircraft arriving later. The version he had told on air had slowly evolved over the years, growing more intense each time it was repeated. When the truth surfaced, the backlash was immediate. Viewers felt betrayed. Fellow journalists were furious. Credibility, the one thing a news anchor cannot afford to lose, evaporated almost overnight. Williams issued a public apology admitting he had misremembered the events, but the damage was already done. NBC suspended him and eventually removed him as anchor, demoting him to a lesser role. His career did not end, but it was permanently reframed. From that moment on, Brian Williams was no longer just a trusted journalist. He was a cautionary tale. Live television did not expose a bad night or a single mistake. It exposed how dangerous it is when storytelling drifts too far from truth. And once trust is gone, no teleprompter can bring it back. John Travolta. In 2014, John Travolta stepped onto the Oscar stage as a seasoned Hollywood icon. Decades of stardom, countless red carpets, and enough award show experience to make this moment routine. His task was simple. Introduce the singer about to perform Let It Go, the biggest song on the planet at the time. What came out of his mouth was not her name. Instead of Idina Menzel, Travolta delivered a completely new identity to the world, a name so wildly incorrect that it instantly sounded fictional. The audience laughed. The internet paused for half a second, and then the memes began printing themselves at industrial speed. The moment was brief, but live television is ruthless with short moments. That single introduction overshadowed the performance itself. Social media replayed it endlessly, remixing the clip, turning the mispronunciation into a running joke that refused to die. For days, it felt like Hollywood had collectively agreed to forget the Oscars existed solely to focus on one mangled name. Travolta quickly apologized, and to her credit, Menzel handled the situation with grace. There was no public feud, no lasting hostility, just an awkward mistake frozen in pop culture amber. His career did not collapse, his reputation did not implode, but the damage was subtle and persistent. From that night on, John Travolta was no longer just an actor. He was the man who introduced Adele Dazeem. Live television did not ruin his career. It simply gave him a nickname he never asked for and will never fully escape. Howard Dean. In 2004, Howard Dean was a serious contender for the Democratic nomination. He had momentum, grassroots energy, and a message that resonated with voters tired of politics as usual. After finishing third in the Iowa caucuses, Dean took the stage to rally supporters and prove that his campaign was far from over. Then came the scream. At the end of his speech, fired up and full of adrenaline, Dean let out an enthusiastic yell meant to energize the crowd. In the room, it worked. On television, stripped of context and replayed endlessly, it looked strange, awkward, and completely unpresidential. The media looped it non-stop. Late-night hosts had a field day. The internet, still young but already ruthless, crowned it instantly. The moment became known simply as the Dean Scream, and it swallowed everything else. Policy positions vanished.
Texas and New York, and we go to South Dakota and Oregon and Washington.
Campaign strategy disappeared. All anyone talked about was that one sound. A single burst of enthusiasm was transformed into a symbol of instability and ridicule. Dean's campaign never recovered. Donations slowed, support faded, and the race moved on without him. While he later found success in other political roles, his presidential ambitions ended right there, frozen in a few seconds of live television. This was not a scandal or a lie. It was a reminder that in politics, optics can outweigh substance. Live TV did not judge what Howard Dean said, it judged how he sounded. And sometimes, that is all it takes for a campaign to lose its voice. Be honest, if this moment happened today, would anyone even care? Or would it disappear in 5 minutes on social media? Drop a 1 if you think the scream killed the campaign, drop a 0 if the media blew it way out of proportion. Steve Harvey. In 2015, Steve Harvey was everywhere. Game shows, talk shows, stand-up hosting gigs. He was considered one of the safest pairs of hands on live television, which is exactly why he was trusted to host Miss Universe that year. Big stage, global audience, simple job. Read the card, say the name, smile. Then came the card. Steve announced Miss Columbia as the winner. Confetti fell. Tears flowed. Crowns were placed. For a few surreal minutes, the world accepted a new Miss Universe. And then Steve looked back at the card. Live. On camera. In real time. He had read it wrong. What followed was one of the most uncomfortable walkbacks in television history.
The first runner-up is Colombia.
Steve returned to the stage, microphone in hand, and did the unthinkable. He corrected himself. Miss Philippines was the real winner. Miss Colombia was first runner-up. The celebration stopped. The smiles froze. The crown changed hands under the brightest lights imaginable. The internet exploded. Memes, jokes, reaction videos, and endless replays turned the moment into instant pop culture legend. For a brief period, Steve Harvey became the punchline of the entire planet. To his credit, he did not dodge responsibility. He apologized immediately and publicly, owning the mistake instead of hiding behind producers or cue cards. That decision mattered. The storm passed, the jokes faded, and his career survived. Live television did not destroy Steve Harvey. It tested him. He failed the moment but passed the recovery. And in a world that rarely forgives mistakes, that ability to stand there and say it was my fault made all the difference. Will Smith. In 2022, Will Smith walked into the Academy Awards as Hollywood royalty. Decades of box office dominance, a carefully polished public image, and a career built on charm, humor, and relatability. That night was supposed to be his coronation, capped by an Oscar win. Then came the joke. When Chris Rock made a comment about Smith's wife Will, initially laughed along with the crowd. Seconds later, everything changed. Smith walked onto the stage, struck Rock, returned to his seat, and shouted at him on live television. For a moment, the audience thought it was scripted. Then the room went silent. The Oscars had stopped being an awards show and turned into a global shock event. Clips spread instantly across the world. News outlets dropped their planned coverage. Social media exploded with debates, memes, outrage, and disbelief. The actual awards that followed felt almost irrelevant. Even when Smith later won Best Actor, the moment was overshadowed by what had already happened. The fallout was severe. Smith issued apologies, resigned from the Academy, and faced widespread criticism. His reputation, once defined by likability and control, was now permanently linked to a single emotional outburst. No matter what he does next, this moment will follow him. This was not a career built slowly or destroyed slowly. It was one walk, one reaction, and one live broadcast that rewrote a legacy in seconds. Live television does not care about context. It only cares about what everyone saw. If moments like this remind you how fast a legacy can change on live TV, hit subscribe and stay with us. Because the next clip might rewrite another career in real time. Career in real time. Career in real time. Career in real time. John Travolta. In 2014, John Travolta stepped onto the Oscars stage as a seasoned Hollywood icon. Decades of stardom, countless red carpets, and enough award show experience to make this moment routine. His task was simple. Introduce the singer about to perform Let It Go, the biggest song on the planet at the time. What came out of his mouth was not her name. Instead of Idina Menzel, Travolta delivered a completely new identity to the world, a name so wildly incorrect that it instantly sounded fictional. The audience laughed. The internet paused for half a second, and then the memes began printing themselves at industrial speed. The moment was brief, but live television is ruthless with short moments. That single introduction overshadowed the performance itself. Social media replayed it endlessly, remixing the clip, turning the mispronunciation into a running joke that refused to die. For days, it felt like Hollywood had collectively agreed to forget the Oscars existed solely to focus on one mangled name. Travolta quickly apologized, and to her credit, Menzel handled the situation with grace. There was no public feud, no lasting hostility, just an awkward mistake frozen in pop culture amber. His career did not collapse, his reputation did not implode, but the damage was subtle and persistent. From that night on, John Travolta was no longer just an actor. He was the man who introduced Adele Dazeem. Live television did not ruin his career. It simply gave him a nickname he never asked for and will never fully escape. Howard Dean. In 2004, Howard Dean was a serious contender for the Democratic nomination. He had momentum, grassroots energy, and a message that resonated with voters tired of politics as usual. After finishing third in the Iowa caucuses, Dean took the stage to rally supporters and prove that his campaign was far from over. Then came the scream. At the end of his speech, fired up and full of adrenaline, Dean let out an enthusiastic yell meant to energize the crowd. In the room, it worked. On television, stripped of context and replayed endlessly, it looked strange, awkward, and completely unpresidential. The media looped it nonstop. Late-night hosts had a field day. The internet, still young but already ruthless, crowned